We're on a mission from God. My brother and I are headed to Atlanta, Georgia this morning. It is a 7-hour drive and the time zone change, but you know what? It's gonna be great. We've never been to Atlanta before. It should be a fun drive. And my brother is the best navigator, right?
I can navigate.
We'll see how this goes. We'll let y'all know when we get there. Peace. It has been several years since I've been to an anime convention. It's Romania Black. And yeah, as the intro says, my brother and I decided this year to go to Momocon, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was from May 22nd to May 25th. And we drove down on a Thursday and stayed until Sunday. And so I kind of wanted to talk about Momocon because I feel like a lot of videos talk about the con experience in a negative light. And I wanted to talk about how amazing Momocon was and about how I feel that anime conventions are probably more important now than ever, but that's going to be towards the end of the video. So I'm going to segment this out where it's got lots of different sections if you want to go to and see certain things that we talked to, because I wanted to talk about the experience because it was so much fun. I've not been to an anime convention in 7 years and since pre-COVID, and for anime conventions, this was the biggest one I've been to. It was such a fun experience. I want to go back and I want to talk about that experience and just kind of, if you're curious about Momocon and if it's worth going to, I feel like we should talk about it and all the fun things and how it's laid out and how it all went down, what my experience was like. Because I tried to talk in different channels on the Discord on Patreon about it. And then I'm like, I need to just compile all of my thoughts into one video, share it with you all. This is a vlog of our experience. I've been to some anime conventions before. The very first one I went to, I actually stumbled across on accident, which was back in 2012. It was the second Anime Blues Con in Memphis, Tennessee. And my friends and I in college were on like a spring break trip. And I was like, what is this anime convention? What? And so after that, my brother and I went back in 2013, and then some friends and I went back in 2014 to Anime Blues Con, and that was a lot of fun. And it was fun to go back for a couple of years, but I wanted to branch out and do different things. And so in 2015, 14 or 15, my friends and I went to Wizard World, which was more of like a comic con than an anime convention, and it was in St. Louis. And then my brother and I went in 2016 to Gen Con in Indianapolis, Indiana, and that is like the mecca of board games, Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop RPGs. Like if you want to go do that, Gen Con is the place to go. I would say the crowds at Gen Con were about the same as Momocon. It was about 60,000 people, which was crazy. And we'll talk about Momocon. Momocon didn't feel like 60,000 people, which we're going to talk about, but it was really huge. So we went there in 2016, and then in 2018, my brother and I, which is the last anime convention we went to Anime Midwest in Chicago, and that was a lot of fun. That one was, I would say that one and Blues Con, where it was a little bit bigger than Blues Con, so it was pretty comparable. It was a lot of fun. Not as big as Gen Con, obviously, and then COVID happened. We didn't go anywhere for a couple years. We were going to go to Gen Con in 2020, but that got pushed back to 2022, and then we went in 2022 to Gen Con, and that had been the last convention my brother and I had been with. We love going to conventions. It's like a sibling bonding trip. We are very different people. We both love anime, but that's about the extent of our similarities. We love anime. We've watched some shows growing up together, but he's more of a gamer. I'm more into like the anime and manga, and we have very different genres that we like and very different series, but we both kind of love geeking out about it in our own special ways. So it's a fun bonding trip for us as siblings because we're each other's only siblings. And so it had been 3 years. So I thought, let's go to an anime convention. And my brother doesn't like flying. So that kind of limits us as well. And I'm like, okay, what can you theoretically make into a drive in one day and not feel terrible? And so Atlanta, Georgia was initially about 7 hours from where I live. Which we decided to make a road trip out of it. It's a pretty straight shot from where we are. It wasn't hard to get to. I laugh at the 7 hours because when we started, it was going to be 7 hours. And then there were 2 major crashes on the highway going down, which made it a 9-hour trip overall, which coming back home was nice though, because when we came back home, we'll talk about it at the end, but it was a lot smoother than what it was going down. But yeah, so, I guess we should talk about the trip and Momocon and just all the things that we did and kind of break it down for y'all if you're interested in going and just let you know how the experience was. My brother is so gross for this. The lady at the gas station was like, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. And everyone thought we were weird, but my brother, bleh. Ooh, if you all like this, I don't even know what to tell you. So yeah, Thursday was our drive down. It was it ended up being about 9 hours driving down. I will say, Atlanta, I had heard the rumors about traffic in Atlanta. I know that if you watched The Walking Dead, it infamously takes place around Atlanta, and there's the infamous shot of the highway with the cars lined up and the zombie apocalypse happening, which I'll show you all over here. I was afraid that it was going to be that bad. And honestly, I've drove in St. Louis, I've drove in Chicago, I've drove down in Tennessee, I've drove through Virginia and major cities in Raleigh, North Carolina. I would honestly say Atlanta was not hard to drive through. It was not as difficult as Chicago. Chicago, everybody's really uptight and like anxious and like, get out of my lane. And Atlanta was more like, we're just going to be here forever. They've all resigned themselves to the fact that we're stuck in traffic forever, and it's fine. But it wasn't bad to drive in. One thing I would say right off the bat is that I would try, if possible, to stay at the site of the hotel or at the Hilton next door or a hotel that is within walking distance of the venue. We stayed at the Hyatt Regency, which I got a good deal on. I ordered my tickets really far in advance, so they weren't booked up yet. And I don't think they'd quite realized that it was a place you could stay at for the convention, so they hadn't hiked their rates up. So I got a really good deal on a hotel room. And it was maybe a mile from the convention center. So if you wanted to walk a mile, you could. My brother was not comfortable doing that. He's a very reserved person. He's like, no, we need to drive. And I was like, okay. So we ended up driving. I think there were some shuttles if you wanted to. My brother wanted us to have access to a car in case we wanted to go somewhere. And I was like, okay. I've been around cities through college and most of my adult life. My brother has not. So we kind of had to go back and forth on that. But if you could stay within walking distance, I think you would have been fine. And that would be great. And if you can find the shuttle or take like the Metra, they had like a train subway system that you could use. That was really efficient. The one thing that was like a to my wallet the entire weekend was parking. Parking in Atlanta is not cheap. It's city parking, and it's one of those things where, lesson learned, I would have gotten close to the hotel and I would have just bought a 4-day parking pass and just bit the bullet and did that and just not have to worry about it, or did like whatever parking I could that was nearby that was cheap. I would have done that. You're going to need to bring money to park. By the time that I bought parking for the public lot that was by the hotel, because the valet parking at the Hyatt was really expensive. It was like $60 a night. And I was like, absolutely not. So we did public parking that ended up being like $25 a night next door. But then if you wanted to go to the convention center and park there, that was like an additional $25 a day. And then we ended up going to the Aquarium there in Atlanta and paying for that parking, which was like $25. We ended up paying about $150 in parking for the 3 days we were there, which to me is a lot. That's expensive and it's excessive. And if it had just been me, I would have just walked back and forth. But my brother didn't want to walk at night in a city. And I was like, it's going to be okay. But he didn't want to do it. So we ended up doing that. But and if you can avoid parking, if you decide to fly, there were flights that could be to Atlanta that if we go again, we might look into the flights and just get a shuttle to the hotel and back. Because the nice thing about where the hotel and convention center is for Momocon is there's a lot of places you can walk to eat at. They're currently doing a lot of construction around the World Congress Center where the convention was happening at. So I looked in some Reddit threads afterwards when I was getting ready to do this video, and a lot of people said that once the construction's over with, hopefully by next year or the year after, there's going to be a lot more restaurants, a lot more downtown walking space, which I'm excited about. I think that'll be really nice when it's done. It wasn't distracting and the construction wasn't bad for us being there. I've been in immensely worse, but there were still places to walk around and get food that were relatively close. So if you could fly into Atlanta and just take a shuttle back and forth to the hotel when you get there and when you leave, I think you would save a lot of money and it would not be that bad. There is an Amtrak train that goes into Atlanta, but the Amtrak did not go to my state or up my way. So that was not of benefit. But I think I might consider flying in the future because it's only like an hour and a half flight from where we live to Atlanta, and then just do the shuttle. And I'd have to do like a cost analysis to see like, is gas in Georgia was insanely cheap. We'll talk about that when we left, but gas in Georgia is so much cheaper than Illinois. I was like, so the gas cost analysis, I would need to do a compare and contrast, see which was more beneficial. But I do definitely think that if you're going to go, plan for parking, because parking was expensive. Now, we did have a really fun road trip down. People were like, are you a podcast person or do you listen to music? We kind of did both. When we started out, we listened to music for about an hour. And then we were getting into like the traffic of Atlanta. We turned back to music. But for a solid 4 hours of the trip, we just put on Dragon Ball Z Abridged and we just listened. I listened to this Namek saga. And then we just did that going down. And we grew up watching Dragon Ball Z Abridged when I was in college and he was in high school. So it's just something we always like laugh about. We quote all the time. So it was a lot of fun. And then we got down there and we mainly got to our hotel, get checked in. My brother and I have a tradition that we always like to order pizza the night that we get to a convention. We started it when we first went to the first anime convention we ever went to. And my brother ever since then was like, we should get a local pizza and just chill out. He brought his Switch with him. He brought his Switch and hooked it up in the hotel room. He's like, I'm going to play Switch and we can get pizza and just get settled in and get ready for the convention. Because by the time we got there, Thursday night, it was already 6 or 7 and there wasn't a lot of panels going on the first night that we were interested in. So we're like, we'll just settle in, get ready. And I actually had a picture that I wanted to make to get autographed at the convention. So I was like, well, I'll draw my picture. You can play your game. He played Digimon and then he had Final Fantasy V. And he played that and we just kind of hung out and had pizza. It was great. If you go to Atlanta, Night Owl Pizza was not bad. It was pretty darn good. The garlic knots, and they delivered right to the hotel. It was pretty good. I was excited about that. So I'll show you all the picture I drew here in a little bit. But yeah, so Thursday was a nice night, just getting settled in, getting ready. And then we were going to start the next day to go to Momocon. Just for reference, it's like that suitcase and then your brother's. I want to go to the convention website before it shuts down for the year and kind of walk you all through the schedule, because one thing I was really blown away about Momocon as it got closer and closer and I started to plan out our trip was how extensive this convention is. My brother and I have already decided if we go back, I don't know if we'll go back next year or if we'll go back the year after that, but whichever the case may be, we might go to a different convention next year and then go back to Momocon in 2027 when the construction's over. But I will say, if we go back, we will definitely go on a Wednesday and plan to start the day with Thursday and do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, because there was so much to do. We hardly got to do anything while we were there. And it was only because there wasn't enough time. And by the time you plan everything out. So I want to show you the convention schedule to give you an idea of what all there is to do at Momocon and kind of walk you through what we saw. But this was the main website. And they have like registration they talk about. They have a fact. They have photos from previous ones. They had the guest list on there. They had how autographs work, which I'll talk about. They have the convention schedule we're going to go through. They had K-pop battles. They had different contests. We definitely always want to go to the cosplay contest. That's like one of our favorite things to watch. They had fan photo shoots, which we'll show on here. They had live entertainment. They had karaoke going all day, which is really funny to me because the first day we were there on Friday, it was like 10 a.m. and we were riding up an escalator and there was a woman behind me and someone was off to the side. And look, all karaoke is valid, but 10 a.m. karaoke where they think they're American Idol and it is not American Idol. That woman looked at me and she's like, it is too early for karaoke. I was like, it is too early indeed. So they also had a maid cafe. We didn't get to go to the maid cafe because it was sold out every day we were there. The tickets for the maid cafe were sold out. They had workshops. I wanted to go to a workshop, which I'll show you all here in a second. I wanted to go to a workshop that was there, and by the time I went to go buy tickets, it was sold out. So here's the workshops, for example. They would have materials and fees that you could get for the items you were going to do in craft corners. So I want to see like which ones were left available. Like they had learning to paint. They had candy sushi bento, flower crossed crowns. The one I wanted to go to was on Friday, and I think it might have been sold out. Where was it at? It was like really early on Friday. It was how to do a bento. So if I do the bento one, yeah, they had candy sushi bento. They had one Sunday that was sold out. They also had one Friday that was sold out as well. And they were only like $5 or $10. So they were really, really simple to get signed up for, but a lot of them sold out very quickly. And then they also had like AMV contests going on. They had a lot of vendors there, which we'll talk about and show you all that. But here's like basically they had links to the workshops and all that in the parking info. I will say just real quick to show you all the parking info. They had like the Metra lines that you could take, which was cool, or the MARTA, they called it MARTA rail. But then they also had all these parking. Honestly, this was the convention center, this gray spot here. So we parked in the green deck one day, and the green deck was literally like right there. And then we parked in the orange deck the other day, and it was also right by the convention center. So there was like 2 or 3 different entrances and ways to get in. You could get into the convention center through the hotel, which was the Omni Hotel. You could also get in by the College of Football Hall of Fame there. You could also get in by the park, and that's by where the aquarium was. Like, there were a lot of ways to get to the convention center and find your way around, which was nice. You just kind of had to get your bearings the first day you were there. And so honestly, the red or green deck, I think even the red deck, those 3 were super close and they were super easy to park in. Those would have been my choices in the future. I don't know about the yellow lot or the blue lot. They seemed a little far away, but the green, the red, and the orange, they were all solid bets. Like, those were all really, really good. But yeah, so then they had like the show hours. They had pop-up lockers we saw that people could rent. So if you bought a lot of things and you were like, I don't want to walk all the way out to my car, you could just get a pop-up locker and just use it and have access to it and store your stuff for the day, which was really nice. They had a skating rink. Where was the skating rink? We didn't know where the skating rink was. The thing about this building, the Georgia World Convention Center is huge. It is 6 levels. And it is across this massive amount of space. It is probably one of the biggest convention centers I've ever been to. Also, it was perfect for Momocon because if you have about 60,000 people there, you need space to put 60,000 people and it not be like, I've seen some of the anime LAX like shots where everybody's just crowded and you can't breathe, it looks like. That was never the feeling at Momocon. It was all spread out. There were people outside doing photo shoots. There were people in the main lobby, of course, but then people were going up and down the escalators. It was crowded, showing you there was a lot of people, but it never felt suffocating. It felt like there was plenty of room to move around. If you need to go off to the side and fix your cosplay or take a breather or something, there was room to do it. For as many people that came to the convention, to the anime convention, it was a very spacious area, which was nice. Then we'll get into the other things, but the exhibit hall was open till 7 a.m. It was like 10 to 7 every day, except Sunday was 10 to 5, and they registered starting at 9. They had all of this down here. The autographs and Walk of Fames we'll talk about. They had wrestling? They had wrestling at Momocon, which was just like, what? So I've watched a couple of videos from Swell Entertainment where Amanda on that series talks about certain cons, and one convention she was talking about in particular, she mentioned that there were not things for people to do other than go and look at the vendors. That was not the case at Momocon. There was not only the autograph places, which we'll talk about in a second, but there was so many things to do, which I'm going to talk about in this video. But they had a wrestling ring that was by the vendors, which was a cool place if you just wanted to kind of like take a break from the vendors in the artist alley and sit and watch people in costume wrestling. It was great. I saw a woman dressed as Fallon, and she let me take her picture casting a spell on the ring. So I was like, that was really fun. It was really neat to see. But yeah, so the programming schedule, looking at this, you could see that there was a lot going on. There were workshops, there was panels. This was the large room and events panels. So like, for example, you can see Thursday, if you wanted to do a 5 Nights at Freddy's PJ party, I guess we could have done that when we got there. But there was a lot of things. The one cool thing is that on Thursday, like for example, Sungwon Cho, who does the voice of Senshi in Dungeon Meshi, he had a panel that first day. And so there were other panels and like meetups and Mario Kart tournaments and things like that. So it was really rewarding, I feel, if you came the first day. There was going to be things to do, which is really nice, because usually sometimes at cons the first day, there's like nothing to do except walk around the artist alley, and you're like, why do I show up on the first day instead of Friday or Saturday? Here, there was a legit reason to show up early, which was kind of cool. There was stuff to do on Thursday. Friday and Saturday were obviously the big days, and there was a lot going on. They had stuff going on into the morning. I wanted to note from some of these things, some of the stuff I wish I could have gone to but didn't. I wasn't able to go to the live drawing with Studio Trigger, which we'll talk about, but Studio Trigger was there. They had lots of panels about Dungeon Meshi because that's their, latest series. It's the most popular one. Studio Orange was there for Trigun, which I did get to go see that panel. We'll talk about it. But there was lots of different voice actors that had panels. There was Q&A panels. And so we'll talk about that as it goes through and kind of show everything. But yeah, the one thing I kind of thought was cool was, I don't know if it's cool or not, but at 11:30 p.m., Women Deserve More from Animation. We put that at 11:30 p.m.? That seems a little bit sexist. I'm joking. There was a lot of Dungeon Meshi panels this weekend at Momocon, because the three main voice actors of the English dub, Damian Haas, Casey Mignello, and Sungwon Cho, were there, and so they were having a panel. There was also the main three voice actors. There was Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, and Shadow's voice actor from Sonic the Hedgehog, which was really cool. Christopher Sabat was there for Vegeta, so, and Zoro and all that, so he was there. So there was some Dragon Ball Z panels as well. There was Echo and Heimerdinger's voice actors from Arcane were there. So I saw so many Arcane cosplay. There's so much J-Vic. It was amazing. And then, we'll get into all that when I talk about that. But these were the main panels for there. And then Saturday, you can kind of see there was a lot that was Hell of a Boss and Has Been Hotel that was there as well. They had a rave that started at 10:30. My brother and I looked at each other and went, no. Because I was like, I'm not a raver. But apparently a lot of people were going to the rave. So kudos to you all. Hope y'all are in good health after that. But they had like a rap takeover, and they had like a roast of Baldur's Gate 3. There were a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 cosplay, and my brother kept pointing them out. So that was cool. But yeah, they had a lot of panels, even into Sunday. And these were all the main stage. These were just the main stage shows. So you can see on there is a ton for just the main stages. And they were all spread out. And I'll show you there, like, there was tabletop registrations going on. We'll talk about the game room and all that. It's so much. There was the Maid Cafe tickets. And then going down here, there was fan photo booths. So you could plan out, like, there was an Arcane photo shoot Thursday at 4 o'clock. Or then there was a Donmai photo shoot that was 4 o'clock as well on Thursday. If I had been there for Friday and Saturday, there was like a whole slew of photo shoots on Friday. And then on Saturday, there was also a whole slew of photo shoots as well. And they had them scattered throughout the hotel that you could go find them. So it was really cool. And then Sunday, they had some photo shoots as well, which they kept the Jujutsu Kaisen photo shoot till Sunday, and we left Sunday morning. So it was like, how dare you? But anyway, so yeah, they had all of those. And then at the bottom, they even showed you like the way that the Thomas Murphy, so if it said TM, they had the ballroom split into 3 different rooms that you could go to. This was in the actual hotel that was next to the convention center, but it was the walkway from the convention center to the hotel was super easy. It was right by registration. There was also like a B400 room where the Maid Cafe was. And then they had B300 where they had lots of panel rooms and things like that. And then B200. And then the exhibit hall floor, you can see here the exhibit hall floor. The Walk of Fame was where the main autographs were taking place, but they also had a little autograph place out to the side as well, which was interesting. Then they had all of these vendors that were near the food court. They had a robotics competition. They had a Gundam build shop, which we'll talk about. They had a Star Wars exhibit. Then they had the artist alley. Then they had a car showcase, which we're going to talk about. And then this whole blue section are games, retro, PC, arcade, console. They had an arcade with like dozens of pinball machines. They had a console free play. They had a streamer zone. So if you were a streamer, You could stream for your channel while you were there, which was wild. And then back here in the back was, I guess that's where the skating rink is. We didn't go far enough in the back for the skating rink, but they had the fan photo area and they had board games and stuff. We were at the board game section. We just didn't go fast enough. And the paint and tank, we'll talk about that. But one cool thing was they had a first aid station on every floor, which was great. They also had people walking around that were, I don't know if they actually worked there or if they just did this out of the kindness of their heart, but they had cosplay repair people walking around with signs that said cosplay repair. And they had like scissors and sewing needles and stuff that I guess if you had something happen to your costume, they'd be like, hey, we'll help you. I think they were just people walking around being nice. I don't think they were actual officials, but who knows? But yeah, there was so much going on. It was kind of wild. So yeah, that was mainly the schedule of the tournament itself. And so basically on Friday, the convention center opened at 10 a.m. I'm going to pull up all my pictures for day one and show you kind of you all there and walk through it. But essentially registration opened up at 9 a.m. and we got there around 10-ish because we wanted to show up and get our badges and everything checked in. I will show you all a video of registration because the line was a bit insane. So my brother and I are here. We've gotten our Momocon guide for the weekend, and which I'll talk about in the video. And we've got our badges, which is awesome. My brother would also like to point out that while a very efficient way of getting badges, whoever designed this line system clearly played Roller Coaster Tycoon way too much. So there's that. Yeah. So yeah, the line my brother and I joked was like Roller Coaster Tycoon levels of design. Honestly, the 4-day pass was $95, and I honestly think you get your money's worth. I really do, because the 4 days pass gets you not only into access of the entire event, all the fan photo shoots, all of the panels, all of the main stage stuff is free. All the arcade stuff is free. They had a lot of free video game tournaments going on if you wanted to play those that were free, that were cool. There was just a lot of things to do. And so you basically are spending $100 for 4 days, but I think it's worth every penny of it because there's so much to access and then get to see in there. And we'll talk about the autographs and things like that, but it's so much fun. So I feel like I talked about that the convention center is very efficient. It's spread out. There's like 6 different floors, levels. They're spread out. They're still accessible. There were elevators to get to everything. So if you couldn't take the escalator, there were elevators to get around. There was also stairs. If you got congestion on the elevator, you could take the stairs and do that. It wasn't a long time to walk around from end to end, which was surprising. You kind of got your bearings after a couple hours there and be like, okay, I go this way to get that. I do that. We got our badges. So our badges that we had for the 4-day pass, and they checked these extensively. You got nowhere without these passes. And then I'll talk about the little star on the back here in a little bit. They also had a really cool brochure from Momocon. This was the 20th anniversary of Momocon. And I didn't realize that when I booked it. I didn't realize this was the 20th anniversary. It started in 2005. They had a really cool wall that showed from like year 1 in 2005 to now and how it's grown in size. The first Momocon only had 700 people attend, and now it's up to like 58,000 people, which is so wild. But yeah, the book had everything in it, like all the different things, like the schedule, and they just handed these out. It showed you where everything was at. It basically, if you didn't want to get on your phone and get online, it gave you all of the information, maps, how to find things. As someone that likes being organized, this was a dream. I was like, I could pull this out and be like, here's where we go. And that was all you needed to know. And they had staff on every floor that were all in cosplay. This first staff that we came across were dressed as Marcel and Fallon from Dungeon Meshi. And I was like, ah. And then there was another that were dressed as Vash and Wolfwood, and they were gender bent. And I was like, yes, please. So they were super nice, super helpful. I cannot imagine their day answering questions for thousands of people, but they did an amazing job. The first day I went as Rio from Bochi the Rock. I had purchased this wig online, and I committed the most cardinal sin of cosplayers. I didn't try the wig on before I left. I ran out of time. I thought, oh, it's simple wig. I'll get there. And when I got there, the bangs were like down to my nose. And so I was like, I don't have any scissors. So rule 1 of cosplay, bring all the supplies with you. I didn't think about scissors. So I went down to the hotel lobby and in there bought the tiniest pair of scissors. And I went to the bathroom like a crazy person. And in true Bocchi the Rock fashion, I just anxiously cut bangs. And so they look terrible, but it's fine. It looked fine. Nobody knew who I was. There were no Bocchi the Rock cosplayers, which is so sad. Bocchi the Rock deserves more cosplayers. They really do. No one guessed that I was Rio. There was one girl that asked if I was Coraline, which is fair. I was like, no, but I get that. And then someone else thought I was Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz with blue hair. And I was like, take the compliment, go. And so that's what we did. But yeah, so we got down there. And downstairs, there was this one section of the exhibitor hall where they had different characters come at different times. Like on Saturday, they had Chewbacca from Star Wars that was posing there. And then on Friday, there was Evie. And this little boy was right next to me as I took this picture. And in the most sincere voice, this little boy, he had to be 5 years old, dressed as Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, looked up to his dad and said, "Look, Dad, it's Pikachu." And I just was like, yep, all right, here we go. That's how we're starting the day off. So yeah, so we went in there, got our badges. Everything was great. They have a giant stand up there telling you it's Momocon when you go in the entrance. We walked by. This was the Gundam showcase when we first arrived. All those tables were filled by the end of the weekend, but it was just people bringing in their models that they had done. They had a contest where you could bring in your models for display. The tables those people are sitting at were places where you could buy a model from the vendor and then bring it over there and then put it together and enter the contest, or put it together and take it home. They're like, come here, you can sit down. My brother really thought about it. He was like, I could spend all day just like sitting here putting a model together with other people making models. And it's like a community building activity. You can talk with people. You can share ideas and passions for whichever models you like. He decided not to do it in the end because we had such a long drive home. And he's like, I'm going to put my model. He got a Machine Dramon. From one of the vendors that he's going to put together at home. He's like, I don't want it to get wrecked on the way home. But it was really cool. And our favorites were these 3, which were done by Jenna Croce, but they were all Gundams that were the legendary birds from Pokemon. They were our favorites. We were gagging over them. We were like, these are amazing. They were definitely the highlight for me. So I went to get some autographs because I did a picture. I have fallen in love with Dungeon Meshi, aka Delicious in Dungeon, this year. So I wanted to get autographs from the 3 English dub voice actors for Laios and Senshi and Chilchuck, because I watched a little bit of the dub and I really like it. So I did this drawing that is of our boys. So I put it on Discord, but it's basically Senshi and Chilchuck and Laios. And they are kind of like, it's a mixture of Pulp Fiction. The font and everything's inspired by Pulp Fiction, but I wanted to draw them in suits. And I had Laios holding the mushroom, Chilchuck's holding his tools, and then Senshi has a little sake cup. But I wanted to get each of them to sign them. And so the first one I wanted to go to was Damien Haas, who's Laios, because Laios is my favorite. So I wanted to see him. I thought that his signing was like 10 to 11:30. It turns out that it was 11 to 12:30. They had changed it at the last minute, and it worked out. I'd gotten there and gotten in line around 10:30. So I just stood there for about 30 minutes, and then he showed up. I didn't get a picture with Damien because he had a face mask on. He wasn't feeling well. He was being very respectful, but he was super nice. He was very sweet. I was like, it takes a lot for you to come on and do autographs for an entire day when you're not feeling well. And so he did have a sign up saying that he had kind of lost his voice the weekend before at a previous convention. So he was really sweet and kind, though, and he liked the picture, so I signed that. Next to him, though, I didn't get a picture with her because it didn't feel genuine, but the English voice actress for Mao Mao, she was right next door to him, and she did not cosplay when I saw her, Friday, but on Saturday she cosplayed as Mau Mau, and so there's a picture here of her. She was so sweet and nice, but I've not watched a lot of the English dub of Apothecary Diaries, so it felt kind of like disingenuous to go up to her and be like, hey, Echo Lee, will you sign this, even though I've not really watched you as Mau Mau. Since then, though, since I've gotten home from the convention, I have watched some of the Apothecary Diaries in the English dub, and she does a great job, because I was like, I want to hear what her voice sounds like. She's amazing as Mau Mau. So I kind of wish in hindsight I'd gotten to get her autograph, but that'll be for another time. But she seems super sweet. But the one thing about the autographs that I would have done in the future, if I go back, I would have tried to get if I wanted autographs, I would have gotten them all on Thursday. I would have spent Thursday and gotten the autographs I wanted if I had wanted autographs. And I'm not usually an autograph person. I had just done this drawing and I was like, well, I'm going to be there. Might as well. But I didn't really have anybody else in mind that I needed an autograph from. But I would say if you're going to do autographs, do them Thursday when the lines are shorter and there's not as many people. By Saturday, the lines were insane. And I got lucky on Saturday. But even Friday, the lines were crazy. Like Christopher Sabat, his lines were just... There was someone I met at the convention that said they waited 5 hours to get an autograph from him. And I 100% believe it. So... I did not have to wait that long. The longest I waited was maybe close to an hour for Casey, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But I definitely would recommend going the first day you get there. If you want autographs, get them done. And then that way you have all the time. Because I feel like I wanted to go see the live drawing with Studio Trigger, but it ate into the time I was getting the autograph from Damien. But the guy right behind me, he was like, it's probably just somebody from Studio Trigger drawing and you just watch it, which would be cool in itself. But in hindsight, I would get the autographs early so I could do more of the panels because I did miss out on some of those. Now, the vendor level, oh my gosh, y'all. Oh my gosh. It's huge. There's so many aisles, so many things. When I was younger, I would definitely be more into like the vendors and the official merchandise and everything. As I've gotten older, and because we have such a push with AI trying to take over artist spaces, I've gotten more into the artist alleys and supporting the actual artists who are doing fan work and who are doing like creations of their own and wanting to support them. So I've gotten more into that because I think that that's the kind of art we need to kind of protect. So the artist alley and the vendor alley, they were just huge. There were so many aisles. You could spend all day just going up and down the aisles looking at everything that's available. And I will be honest, when you first enter the exhibit hall, I'm not usually someone that gets overstimulated. I was a little overstimulated that Friday getting in the vendor hall. We got there around 10 a.m. and it wasn't as bad because people were just getting there. By the time that it was Friday afternoon and into Saturday, it was just so packed. And I was like, this is a lot. So I definitely would say I never felt suffocating. It was crowded, but not like overdone, but it is overstimulating. So if you're somebody that gets easily overstimulated, you got to mentally prepare yourself for that for sure. But there's lots of ways to get around in there. So luckily, and there's lots of, if you need to go sit down, they had spaces to sit down. They had spaces where the food vendors were. Then you could go over to the gaming area. There was a lot of stuff to do. Like the wrestling ring was really cool. The Gundam area, they had a Star Wars area. People were like flying around little cars and it was super cute. Like they were the little model droids from the Star Wars movies that were like full blown replicas. They were great. But yeah, walking around, I met a couple that was Jinshi and Mau Mau. I didn't see a lot of Jinshis. I saw a hell of a lot of Mau Maus. I saw so many Mau Maus because Apothecary Diaries is really popular right now. I didn't see a lot of Jinshis, but that was one of my favorites. I liked the ombre wig. And then I asked if I could take their picture because you always ask. And they were like, sure. And when they got done, they gave me a frog sticker, which if you know, you know. But I was like, ah! And they're like, here you go. You get this since you took our picture. I was like, cool. But yeah, some of my favorite merch that I saw, I didn't buy any merch from the official merches because I was like, nope, if I'm going to buy anything, it's going to be from the artist alley. I did see these Fooly Cooly shirts though. I almost bought the Fooly Cooly shirt because I was like, oh, dang, that's really good. But I held back. I was like, no, I'll wait till if it's maybe time I actually watch Fooly Cooly and then I'll go back and get it. But yeah. Speaking of Arcane, this was one of my favorite things they were doing like throughout the weekend. These two individuals were doing a giant mural from Arcane. That is chalk. That is pieces of chalk that they are drawing with and coloring with. I was floored. I was like, oh, and they definitely were like, go ahead and take a photo. And I was like, this is amazing. But yeah, they're, the artistry that's like that is what blows my mind, is people just casually sitting there creating these beautiful works of art. And I was like, just living it up. So I did get to go see Sungwon Cho's, his Q&A. I have loved this voice actor since before he was Senshi for Dungeon Meshi. I've watched his Pro ZD videos, his skits, his Yu-Gi-Oh skits, his card game skits. The whole thing with Whiteboard Kun came from him and Tomoko having lamps on. Like it can Chair Sama. It came from it was inspired by his skits to have Whiteboard Kun. And so I really wanted to just watch a Q&A, and he's the nicest person. He's so down to earth and so real and just a really kind soul. And I was like, it was just awesome to hear people ask him like just random questions about what he likes. I'm like, it's cool. You get to kind of know, it is very parasocial in a way, but it's cool to get to know people and just know how people think. It's just neat. And it was cool to have him answer some questions about the shows and like his voice acting experience, which was fun. I always like hearing people's voice acting experiences and what they've done and how they started and what challenges and hurdles they faced. It was cool. People had some really good questions, which was great. Then I walked around and they had a huge show car place. It was over by the artist alley. You can see the Mandalorian that is cinema roll themed, and it was incredible. But they had so many. I didn't know what Itashas were until this weekend. I know, I'm behind the times. But Itashas and car replicas, there were so many cars with wraps. They had a contest going on the whole weekend. They had over 50 vehicles there, which was incredible. I loved the cinema roll one. That one was amazing. And the cosplayer doing the Mandalorian cinema roll, they were in character. It was so cute. I loved it. I also really liked this one. This car was pretty neat. I wanted to get like a shot of all the cars you could see down there. My favorites of the weekend were, I loved this car that was power themed. The power one was really good, and this was the side of it. I love it. I loved the power wrap. That one was really good. I also really liked this Red Riot. The engine had like the lightning bolts and stuff on it. The engine was amazing. The Red Riot, like I would drive that. That was really, really cool. I loved that. It was so clean and crisp. But yeah, then there also was, here's a shot of just the main aisle down with the artist alley. There was so many people in cosplay. The cool thing was they had a cosplay costume contest, but there was just so many people that were in just equally amazing cosplay just walking around. Like there were two individuals. They were Lilith and Adam from Hazbin Hotel. The Lilith, she was immaculate. And she had this sheer top that I was like, you could be Dark Lady from Sailor Moon with that. So I went up to her and I was like, hey, this is a weird question, but where'd you get that? And she's like, Shein. And I was like, okay. And she's like, it's really for Dark Lady. And I was like, I know. So I was like, yes. But it was just really cool to just see the craftsmanship that people do with cosplay. It's an art form. I've always loved cosplay because even cosplay is so much fun because there's no wrong way to do it. Because you can either do it like content specific where you are immaculately representing the character from the show, how they dress, everything's on point, everything's 100%. Or you could do like during the cosplay contest, which we'll talk about in a little bit, there was someone that did Sailor Jupiter as a witch. So she had like a big green hat and then she made this big bow and had a broom that was themed like Sailor Jupiter's like symbol. And I was like, that's so crazy and creative. And then there were people that would do like I always call them like the casual AU cosplay where it's like, oh, hey, I'm Link, but I'm wearing the colors and the patterns, but it's like a hoodie and sweatpants. And I'm like, even that's cool because it's creative. You're like, how do I make this casual where I can wear it around and it not be uncomfortable? So there's so many levels and a spectrum of how you want to do cosplay, and there's no wrong way to do it. And that's what's so creative and fun about it. And then when you see people, you're like, are they that? are they that? And then you kind of just guess around. It's a lot of fun. They also had the Fooly Cooly bike. Speaking of Fooly Cooly, which was super cool, and they had Haruka's Vespa and guitar. Was totally into that. Loved that to pieces. I saw the twins, for example, from Oron High School Host Club. This was their interpretation of it. Living. I loved their hair. I loved the outfits. Again, it was interpreting the cosplay in their own way, and it was so cool. And everybody was taking pictures of them. By the time I got to take a picture of them, they were like, okay. They had about had enough of the cosplay photos. I was like, I know you want to walk around, but just let me do this. And then there were also, like, in the middle of the vendor alleys, just meetups. So, like, all of these Zoros met up with Luffy to take this picture. My favorite was my brother was like, were they all lost? I was like, yes, they're all different AUs that were just lost and found the same Luffy. And I was like, no, that makes sense. But yeah, I thought that was cool. Like, people would just randomly get in a group and be like, let's take this picture since all of us are together, which I even had that experience too, which was fun. There was also a Back to the Future replica. That was my favorite replica, was they had the DeLorean that was exactly with all the gear and the merch from Back to the Future, which was really cool. So then I went to Casey Mongolo's autograph session, which was on the Walk of Fame. One thing I thought was interesting was that Casey and Damien were on the Walk of Fame, which they were there several different times, but they also had panels too. But Sungwon Cho only had like an autograph station. He was not on the Walk of Fame, which I thought was kind of weird. I would have put him on the Walk of Fame, but who am I to pick those out? Maybe you paid more if you're on the Walk of Fame. I don't know exactly how that works. I know if you are a vendor at Momocon, you're paying top dollar to get that booth. It was like $1,000 to have a booth. I looked it up at the convention, but there's 58,000 people over 4 days. If you've got good merch, you're probably going to make that money back. Probably. Hopefully. But yeah. But so I stood in line waiting for Casey's line was the longest that I waited for, which Casey not only voices Chilchuck from Dungeon Meshi, but he also voices Senshi from Neon Genesis. And it might be they. I apologize if it's not he, if it's they. But they also voice Senshi, and then they also voice a character from, oh my gosh, another series that I've just recently watched, and I feel bad that I don't remember it. But anyway, so I stood in line for about an hour for Casey. Casey was so nice. They took a picture of my drawing. They were super kind, super sweet. Casey was the only person that charged for selfies, which I get it. You want to keep the line going. They were the only one that charged for selfies, so I didn't get a selfie with them. I did get a selfie with Sungwon, which I'll show here in a minute. But they were super, super nice. I did love this Asebi cosplayer that was right next to me in line. Their cosplay was amazing. I loved it. I thought it looked so good. I absolutely was living for it. And then outside in the hall, there was this Digimon cosplay. I was like, you're Wizardmon. You're Wizardmon, and I'm done. It's over. It's great. I loved the Tai and Sora, and they had little crochet Digimon, but the Wizardmon with the Gatomon attached to the hip, eating it up. Absolutely loved it. I also loved the other one, which is Momo's. It's the mega version of hers, but y'all know who it is. But anyway, so we took a break on Friday because we had a little bit of time in between the cosplay contest. In hindsight, I think if we go back, we won't have to do the aquarium again, but we did want to go to the aquarium in Atlanta. I will say, if you are looking for something to do and you like aquariums, the Atlanta Aquarium is kind of amazing. It's probably the best aquarium I've ever been to. They have a whale shark. They also had sea lions. The whale shark was really cool. It was huge, like 40 foot long. It was enormous, and they had these big manta rays in there. But yeah, the whale shark was enormous. They had sea dragons and sea horses, which I was instantly thinking of, like Kingdra and Seadra. I was thinking of all of these Pokemon that were referenced to them. We got to see a sea lion show, which these sea lions, they're trained. They're kind of trained like dogs. The one in the middle, his name was Diego, and he was like 20 years old. And they rescued him when he was like a baby. And he was like, since he was the oldest sea lion, they didn't make him do much. He kind of flipped his flippers and was like, I'm old, leave me alone. The other two were Neptune and Jupiter. Neptune was on our side, and I about sobbed in the stands because they told us their stories. And Neptune had been rescued from a fisherman's net. And when they rescued him, they showed an x-ray and he had bullet fragments in his skull. Like someone had shot at him as a baby sea lion. I was like in the stands sobbing. My brother's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "It's for Neptune." And so I was like, "How could they do that to Neptune?" He was so sweet. I loved it. But yeah, they had alligators. They had, speaking of Apothecary Diaries, they had a lot of poison frogs. So I was like, gotta take the picture of the poison dart frogs. Those were great. They had lots of sharks. It was cool. We got like a frozen lemonade, which felt very Georgian. So that was fun. And then we went back to the convention center to see the cosplay contest. And along the way, saw this awesome Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle who had the skillet. And then the skillet was this, you can't tell from the picture, but when she pressed a button, the calcifer like lit up and also had air blowing out of it, like it had a little fan. It was so creative. I thought it was the cutest thing. I loved it. So yeah, so during the autograph line, I forgot to mention that I did make a convention friend, which is always fun. So Ricochet X Crafts, whose Twitter page is over here, and their handle, if you want to go check out their stuff, they were just randomly chatting. They're from like a state away, and so they make cosplay costumes. They were like in the process of making a Lugia cosplay costume, and I was like, Lugia? And yeah, their stuff's crazy cool. It's super neat. I was like, this is amazing. And their stuff was really, really awesome. They have like a Zubat and a Team Rocket outfit cosplay that I was like, I kind of want that. So it was really cool. They were super nice. But we stood in line for an hour talking about One Piece and just cosplaying what we did during the day. So that was fun. But yeah, so Momocon has 2 cosplay contests. So they have 2 cosplay contests. One is Friday night and one is Saturday. The one that is Friday night was at 8:30. We went and lined up about 7:45-ish, which was smart because by the time we got there, I always say for cosplay contests, everybody likes to go to them because everybody likes cosplay. So my rule of thumb is try to go like an hour early to get in line. And that seems ridiculous, but my brother and I are jaded. We went to a cosplay contest once and we got there at the last minute and they didn't let us go in and see. It was full and to capacity and they wouldn't let anyone else in. And they were like, sorry, we don't have any more seats left. And we were like, so after that, I was like, we're getting there early so we get front and center so we can get the good seats and see the cosplay. But yeah, so the one that was on Friday night was 60% or less you made yourself. So that meant you could have commissioned it or you bought it or you handmade parts of it, but nothing more than 60%, which still was pretty impressive. So we had a lot of different ones that I took pictures of. One of the judges was Fern from Freerin, and she was an amazing Fern, and she kept that cosplay contest going on par. You could tell the Friday night cosplay contest was not the main event. It was like the secondary contest, which makes sense because it's 60% or less. They really were like Saturday night's the big deal, but this one's kind of like the one right next to it, which I would probably do the Friday night if I was going to compete because I'm not a sewer and I'm not good with making costumes. So if I were doing cosplay, I'd be in the Friday night one for sure. But it was cool. The hostess was cosplaying as Mau Mau. She was amazing. She had such stage presence. I'm a speech coach, and I could tell I was like, you probably did speech, or you did really well in your speech class, because she had such cadence, and she was fun to talk to. She kept the energy up. She was super professional. She was top notch. She was like, her and the judges were like, we're going to keep this show going. It was a lot of fun. They were quick and snappy and to the point. Also, shout out to the camera person wearing the Link Click shirt. I was like, yeah, Link Click, you go. So yeah, they had, I would say I took pictures of my favorites. My favorite original costume, where I was talking about that they just took something unconventional and made it into something recognizable, was this person did Wally, but they made, like, they had the eyes as goggles for Wally on top of his head, but then they made like a Keyblade, a Wally Keyblade a la Kingdom Hearts. And it looked so cool, and their clothes were grungy, like the planet. This was so creative, but you could also tell it was Wally, and I was like, that's so cool. I loved that. And then there was one individual that did this original character, which that's the cool thing about the cosplay contest and about the convention in general, is if you want to make up your own character, do it. And people are like, that's freaking cool. So this person made up this Raven Queen, which was so badass and so neat and so intricate. I was like, that's so freaking amazing. And they just had these giant wings and like the raven head that they wore. That was really cool. This one, I looked at my brother and I was like 60% or less, but it was the Gundam. But my brother pointed out that they could have commissioned it. So somebody could have made them this costume. So it technically is not more than 60% handmade by the contestant. So I was like, that makes more sense. Because I mean, they had to have 3D print, or maybe they bought this costume online. They did have rules and regulations. You couldn't buy costumes off of certain sites and compete with. You had to literally pull them together yourself. And I was like, well, that's cool. That kind of keeps it, neat. So here were like the top category winners. The little kids, I didn't take a lot of pictures of the kids because I feel weird taking photos of children to put online. I think that's weird. So I'm probably going to blur out their faces where you can't see them in this picture. But there was two, I don't know if they were sisters or just friends, but they were Powder and Vi from Arcane. The cutest little cosplayers. And then this other girl was Sakura from Cardcaptor, and her outfit was so cute too. And by the end of the night, she had like this her regular jacket on because she was cold, and I was like, that's so cute. Then the Gundam one won. The Wally, there were two individuals that were a team. I don't know what game they were, but there's a picture up there for them. And then the other ones were, there was somebody from Murder Drones that everybody thought was really cool. And then there was one individual that was Frankenfurter, and that was one of the director's choices because they said the Frankenfurter was really well done, which it was. And then there was somebody else that had done like My Little Pony, but made her like murderous. And I was like, it was like Five Nights at Freddy's meets My Little Pony. I was like, that's so crazy. So yeah, they were the winners of that night. And then just randomly, the only Bocchi the Rock thing I found on the first day was I found a gotcha machine that I took a picture next to, but I'm terrible at gambling. So I was like, not going to do it. But I was like, oh, a Bocchi the Rock thing. So that was really cool. I will say as far as the food goes for this, I ate both days they had a hibachi grill that was there, and it was like chicken hibachi with rice and like cabbage and stuff like that. It was really good. They had a lot of restaurants, but the hibachi was solid. So I just stuck with it, and it's prices you would expect. It was like $16 for hibachi, but that was my lunch. And then I got like a drink that was $5. If you go to a concert, if you go to any type of venue or a sports game, you're going to pay that much for food. So I was like, okay, it's fine. They did have free coffee out in the mornings one day, which I thought was pretty cool. I was like, okay, but it ran out really quick. So day one was a lot of fun. And then day two we had going on. Apparently there was a dance contest that I didn't know about, but apparently somebody on Discord shared that somewhere they were having a dance contest. Don't know, but somebody was Levi doing some sick moves, and I was like, I don't, again, the convention hall was so huge that you could easily have missed a lot of things. And I was like, okay, that's fair. What do we do? So anyway, I'm going to pull up this stuff from day two and kind of just show you all. But when we showed up that first morning, I decided to be a femnonomy. There were a lot of nonomies at this convention. There were a lot of nonomies. I would say as far as Jujutsu Kaisen goes, I didn't see anybody as nonomy in a skirt, so I was the only one that did that, but there was a lot of nonomies. My brother finally saw one Nobara. There was a lot of Tojis, because Toji's pretty easy to cosplay. There were some Gojos. There were quite a few Ghettos. There were a lot of Nonomis. There were no Mojitos. If I go again, I'm going to cosplay as Mojito, because there was no Mojitos. I'm going to cosplay as him, and you know what I'll do as I walk around everywhere. But yeah, so we showed up the very first 10 minutes we were there on day two, and there were two men that one had a TARDIS and one had a Dalek, and we're controlling them around and like telling people to exterminate. It was the cutest thing. It was so fun. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. I love it.
Oh my God.
It's great. So anyway, I dress as Nanami. I will never wear heels again. Ever. Ever. I was even wearing like the old lady heels. There's no stiletto on there. It's pretty hush puppy soft heel. And 2 hours in, I was like, my feet were killing me. My feet are still killing me a week later. But that was a mistake. Will not do that again. Nope. Comfortable shoes all the way. That's the way to go. So we decided to go down. We hadn't gone to the gaming level yet. So we're like, let's just go do that. And so along the way, I saw this super cute robot that people were controlling that could follow you around and do like the heart eyes and everything. It was really adorable. There were all the Star Wars replicas that were there as well. I found some Blue Lock cosplayers. They were a group. I was like, hell yes. I was so excited. There was also 2 more Blue Lock cosplayers that were in a different group, but they were like in the middle of a line. I couldn't get a picture of them. But this group was walking together. They were a lot of fun. So yeah, I did get to go and do an autograph with Sungwon Cho. So I don't know if he's watched Jujutsu Kaisen though, because when I went to take the photo, he did give free selfies. Also, here's the thing, Sungwon Cho, you are amazing, and ProZD, y'all should support him, because of the 3 individuals that I saw to get an autograph, like the autographs were usually $10 if you had a personal item. So if you brought your own item, it was $10. So like Damien Haas was $10. If you wanted to get an item signed by Casey, it was $10. Casey charged for selfies. Damien did not. But Sungwon, he didn't charge for a personal item and didn't charge for a selfie. And I gave the guy that was taking the money, because when you get in line for the autograph, you go talk to a guy first and you pay for your selfie or you pay for your whatever. And then you scoot down and actually meet the person you're getting the autograph from. I gave that guy $10 because I was like, I don't think it's fair that I paid Damien $10 and Casey $10, but then ProZD is going to get nothing. I was like, that doesn't seem fair. So I gave him $10 and I was like, can you just take this? Because I feel like I don't want to cheat him out of this. And the guy was like, sure, I guess. So who knows? He might have pocketed the $10 for all I know. But I was like, I don't feel that's right to get 3 autographs and only pay for 2. That doesn't seem fair, right? But anyway, to my point, he was super nice, asked how the convention was going, and then I said, can I take a selfie? And then I said I wanted to be as serious. I said the phrase, I want us to be the adult of adults. I don't think he's watched Jujutsu Kaisen. So I don't think he knows that Nanami is the adult of adults. And I think when I said that, he thought I was suggesting something not right. And I was like, I know you're married. I know this is not a thing. And I was like, oh God. And so he was probably just like, no, weirdo, let's go. So if you're watching this, which you probably are not, sorry about that. That's a thing. But yeah, it was super fun. Also, tying ties are hard. To all of you men out there and women who tie ties for your suits, I spent like 20 minutes last night the night before on YouTube trying to do a tutorial and failing, and I finally got it to work at the last minute. But tying ties is hard. My brother's like, why didn't you get a clip-on? I'm like, because I'm a real cosplayer. No, because the real one was cheaper. Anyway, so yeah. So got myself some coffee, went around, and we decided to go to the tournaments hall and check that out in the morning. Now, some of the pictures that I show you all, when we got there at the tournaments hall, it was super early in the morning. It was actually before my autograph with ProZD. The tournaments hall we got to right at 10 a.m. when they were setting up, and it was pretty quiet. Like, there weren't a lot of people around. They were getting things set up. It is a massive space. It is insanely huge. Like, there's the video game arcade spot is pretty condensed, because it's just like if you go to an actual arcade, all the arcade machines are kind of smushed together, and it is a bit crowded. But they had like 6 different TV screens set up. They were doing competitive, like you paid to play Mario Kart tournaments, Smash Brother Melee, Tekken. They had Call of Duty. They had a bunch of tournaments they were playing for money. That were going on throughout the day, that they had giant screens set up, and then they had the places where the players were playing, and then they had a seating area for everybody to watch each of the matches, which was pretty cool. So if you got tired of walking around the exhibitor hall, you could go to the gaming area, sit down and watch some people play Smash Brothers against each other, and sit there for about 30 minutes, and then get rested and go up and go do something else, which is pretty cool. But the center itself was massive. But they had all these giant banners out where you could instantly tell where things were. And the setup people were really cool. They were like, yeah, we've got this going on and this going on. They had people doing commentary. They had a speed run challenge where throughout the day they would have like commentators and people trying to do like speed runs of Sonic 3 and stuff like that. It was really sweet. And you could just sit down and watch it if you wanted to. Like I said, they had the streaming corner. So if you were a streamer, you could like stream your games, and they had screens showing them playing the game, which was kind of cool. So it was a massive space, but it was really easy to navigate. And then we got to where they were setting up the tabletop hall, which was an insanely large space. You can kind of see in the picture, they had mats out, they had Connect Fours, they had Mahjong, they had those games. People were playing Mahjong, like just in groups, which was really cool to see. Right where that tabletop hall sign is, they had a raffle going on where you got one free figurine to paint. And so they would stamp they would write on your badge, give you a star to show that they'd already checked you in. And you got one free figurine to paint per badge, which was kind of cool. I'm all about a paint and take. I'm all about a miniature painting. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it. It's nice. Again, my feet were killing me by midday. And so we went and did the paint and take, and it was just sit down, cool your feet, do something fun. And then you got like a little item out of it. I did think it was really cool. I've never seen this before, but there were these tables set up. This was, again, like 10 a.m., so early morning. These guys were all playing Warhammer. And I was like, I've never played this before. My brother's like, yeah, they're measuring out like how they can attack and everything. I'm like, you have to use a measuring tool? He was like, yeah, that's why these games are crazy. And I was like, what? So I asked these guys if I could take a picture of their display, of their setup, of their game. But yeah, they were like measuring attacks. I'm like, y'all are so technical, and it's 10 a.m. My coffee hasn't kicked in and y'all are doing this technical. That's so cool. But yeah, they were all just playing. It was super neat. They had all of these games. They had Jenga set up. They had lots of board games. They had just like shelves of board games. So if you were like had kids and stuff, you could go do that. At some point, in some place at this convention, they had a manga library. And I do like a manga library. But again, I feel like we just didn't have time. There was so much to do and look at. But they had a manga library somewhere. And then they had this like PC free play where they had all these retro consoles set up. Like they had PlayStations, Dreamcasts, Sega, original Nintendo, NES. They had all of these hooked up, and you could just sit there and play retro games all day. It was so cool. It was awesome. But yeah, so while I was getting my autograph from ProZD, my brother's like, I don't want to wait in line. So they had on one floor, the only thing I will note is that the convention website and the convention guide did not say where these were, but they had screenings throughout the day, all days of the convention. They had screenings of like episodes 1 through 3 of this show, episodes 1 through 3 of this show, just going on. You could go sit down and watch. Again, if you didn't have anything to do, it's like, go check out this show. Like I was trying to convince my brother, they were screening Apothecary Diaries episodes 1 through 3. I'm like, you should go check out the show to see if you'll like it. And he's like, but he went and watched Shangri-La. He's like, I want to go watch the first 3 episodes of Shangri-La Frontier. And I was like, okay, cool. So he went off to go do that, find the screening room and hang out there for like an hour and a half. And I was like, cool, while I was getting my autograph. So I was like, that worked out really, really well. Also, props to ProZD. ProZD had set up where they were going to do autographs from 2:30 to 4. They got there at like 1:45 and they're like, let's just go and do it. Y'all are in line. Let's get it done. And I was like, that's awesome. So props to them because they were super efficient. They came early. They stayed late. They were awesome. So they're such a cool person. And I'm really glad that I got to meet them in the flesh. So yeah, so we went around the gaming area just to scope it out. There was the robotics competition. That part was really cool. We saw some Star Wars cosplayers. The cosplayer that is Obi-Wan Kenobi and Padme, really good cosplayers. They looked a lot like them. And then I decided that I wanted to go and actually see a panel, and I wanted to go see Studio Orange's panel about the graphic designs of Trigun Stampede. And so I went down there. The one thing, if I were to give the convention one thing they could improve upon, and this is the tiniest of nitpicks because I had an amazing time, but in some of the panels, I don't think they could gauge like how popular the panel was going to be. So they didn't quite have a line system set up the best that they could have. Like some panels, they had tape that would show you where to stand to be in line. And that was really efficient. But like the TRIGUN panel, the guy that was outside, I don't think realized how many people were going to come see it. And then we all started showing up and he's like, okay, we'll make this curvy snaky line. And it worked. But it was very much like you could tell the guy that was getting everybody organized was like, shit, I don't know what to do. And so that was the only thing. But I did get to see these people. My brother knows what they're cosplaying as. He knows it's from a video game, but he's like, that's really cool. And they had these really awesome styrofoam wings that were made out of styrofoam that were so light and flexible. I was like, awesome, nice. So I went and saw TRIGUN, Stampede, and Graphic Design, which there's been some awesome posts on Twitter about, which I'm glad other people were there too. So it was 11:30 to 12:30. The panels were like an hour long, so they weren't like super tedious or whatever. But mainly it was the producer for Studio Orange, Watanabe. He was there, and he was a translator for one of the graphic designers that was there giving the presentation. And so the graphic designer did not speak English. He was just speaking Japanese, and then Watanabe would translate, which you could tell at times there was a little bit of an awkward pause as Watanabe was trying to think of like how to translate it from Japanese to English for the audience. But it worked really efficiently. It was the nerdiest panel in the best way. It was super quiet. It was super like calm and chill, and everybody was just like, and as somebody that once minored in art and is into graphic design, I was like, just knowing all the elements that this one person did for this show made me so appreciative of the art form. So they basically showed some posters that they had designed. So they had designed the graphic work for like these posters for TRIGUN Stampede when it was coming out. They also designed these like for the Blu-ray to show like, and the one cool thing was they not only showed the graphic design, but they kind of explained the symbolism about how each of the pictures shows a representation of the character and the thought that went into it, and to take Naito's work. And then they pronounced it Naito. So I was like, have I been saying it wrong the whole time? Because somebody else beside me said Naitao. And I was like, is it Naitao or Naito? Because Watanabe said Naito. And I was like, am I saying this wrong? But they explained kind of the symbolism and how they took Naito's art and then kind of made it their own through the graphic design, which was pretty cool. These are my favorite posters. They designed those as well. The one on the far right with Knives and Vash, I love that poster so much. I was like, oh, I want that. So I was like, that's so cool. But then they got into like some just nerdy graphic design, which I was like, yes, get into the nerdiest, hyper specific things. And they're like, here's what I did. So they made the contract in this one episode. And the cool thing about them making this contract was they talked about how they needed a thumbprint for the middle, like it's stained in blood. And they were like, we needed a thumbprint, but how do you make a thumbprint? So the actual graphic designer used his own thumbprint as the one in the show. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then Watanabe was like, so basically if you shake this graphic designer's hands, you're shaking Wolfwood's hands. And I was like, it was really sweet. But then they showed us like all this behind the scenes stuff of just like the diner and like them putting the labels on things. And it's the nerdiest hyper specific thing, but it made me so appreciative of the animation work that they do, because this one person did graphic design work for this series, things that you would see on screen for a second, if that. And they put all this work into it. And you just have to appreciate it. It's just so neat that all these layers go into it. And of course they tease. They're like, and they're going to work on Stargaze. And I was like, how dare you? But relating to this channel, I was really, really happy because this graphic designer is also the graphic designer for Blue Giant, which is also done by Studio Orange or connected to it. So is Beastars. They've done graphic work for Beastars. But they showed like this concept art and promotional things they've done for Blue Giant. I was like, I've watched that movie on my channel. If I hadn't watched Blue Giant, I would have no clue what this is about. And they didn't spoil it by any means during the panel, but it was so cool to see like this artwork that they had done, and including like all of this promotional material. It was just really neat. If you're into marketing or you've done any graphic design work, this stuff is fascinating. When I was in college, I did an internship at a library and I did graphic design work for them. And I just did little things that were kind of like this. And I was like, that's so neat. I thought that was really, really fun. I loved that. Also, totally humorous, but as I was leaving, I joked, and the people in front of me were joking. There were all these Punishers up against the wall. All these Wolfwood cosplays that were just sitting there. It was hilarious. Loved it. But yeah, that part was really fun. I was really glad that I got to go see that panel. I would honestly go see more official panels if I got a chance to go back and do it. So I went back to the vendor alley. My rule of thumb when I go to a convention is always to go and look the first day, whether it's the artist alley or the vendors, and see what you like and make a note, like take a picture of it, make a note. And then if you still like it the next day, it's not an impulse buy. If you're still like, I still really want that, then go back and get it. And if it's gone, then you're like, oh no, and you saved your money. So it's always like a win-win situation. I have so many blankets in my house, so I did not need this blanket, but this one was really good. If you know, you know. This one was really good. And I was like, ooh, I was very tempted, but I was like, no, thank you. So I went back through. I did see these pins. These pins for One Piece were adorable. I wanted the Yamato one really, really bad. But again, I went back and I was like, no, I don't really that bad. But it was super, super cute. By the time I went back to the models where the Gundams were, there were so many more Gundams on display, and there were so many people making Gundams and putting them together. It was really cool. I didn't run into any mojitos, but I did run into a Toji and a Gojo, and they were super nice. I was like, because the guy that was Toji and I were like, our characters technically haven't met, but can we like pretend like we have met? And we're just going to give this guy a hard time. And he's like, yeah. So they were super cool. They were real ones. They were super into it. I was like, absolutely. Loved it. I also met this Laios and Senshi couple that had the most adorable cosplay. It was super cute. I don't know how y'all did the Senshi cosplays with the beards and the mustaches. That seems unreasonably hot, but it worked. And then, yeah, I thought the bread pun was really good on that one. So Nanami had to get a picture of that. Also, now that I've seen Puella Magi Madoka Magica, I've noticed all of the merchandise. There's so much once you've seen the show. You're like, oh, it's everywhere. I did see 2 cosplayers, and I did see a couple Madokas, so that was fun. I did get their cosplay. Right behind them is a Yang from Ruby, so that's cool. But yeah, so then we went back to the gaming tournament, the gaming area. We did the figurine painting. Speaking of Madoka Magica, by the time we got back, the only figurines they had left that you could paint were either a dinosaur, which I thought about because we'd watched Jurassic Park on the channel last month. But there was also this little cat figurine, so I made mine into a character from Puella Magi Madoka Magica. And was like, we'll do this. I was gonna see if I ever saw any of the Madoka cosplayers and just give them the figurine, but I never did, so I took it home. So I have it now. I'll probably do nothing with it. But it was really cool. They had all of these commentators from Momocon that were talking through the games. People were sitting there watching it. It was really super fun. But they had a free retro gaming tournament set up the whole weekend. So like the Smash Brothers, the Mario Kart tournaments, the Halo, Call of Duty, those were all like $5 to $10 to enter. But the retro games were free. And apparently it's the 20th anniversary of Crash Team Racing, which doesn't make me feel old at all. But my brother and I, we grew up playing PlayStation, so we played Crash Team Racing a lot. So we both entered the tournament at 5 o'clock to do it, which neither of us got out of round 1. I got second place in one race, and then I promptly failed the other 2, and it was like, boo. And my brother, I think he got second place in a race and like third in the others. So we didn't make the top 2 to advance to the second round, but it was a free tournament, so it was fun. But unfortunately, because we did the retro tournament, I didn't get to see the Dungeon Meshi voice actor panel, which I'd wanted to see, but it's fine. I think if I went back in a future year, like I said, I would do the autographs on the first day, and I don't think I would enter any gaming tournaments, but I would definitely map out some time to just go play the games and just have fun, because when you're an adult, it's sometimes hard to find time to do stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, they also had a Tekken tournament that was going on. That was really cool. And they had 2 stations set up right by the stage that you watched, so you could just watch them fight each other. It was really fun. And then by the time we went back, the tabletop gaming station, it was booming. Like there was so much going on where it had been so quiet in the morning. That part was really cool. There was just a lot of people walking around and it was really good. But honestly, the highlight of the evening was the main event cosplay contest. So we got there around 7:30, around an hour earlier. It turns out Ricochet X Crafts, who I'd met in the autograph line, they were like a couple people ahead of us in line for the cosplay contest, so we got to sit next to them, which was super cool. They were super nice. The costume craftsmanship contest was like 2 hours long. There was like 50 entries. It was a lot of people, but these were costumes made 60% or more by hand. It was insane. Some of my favorites was there was this woman from a game who created not only her costume from scratch, but made this giant pig in a diaper that's being lugged around by a friend, like made that and brought it in. Wild times. Wild times. My next favorite were these characters. They were from Final Fantasy XIV. They were just like the bee drones, but they made the costumes by hand, and this giant lance that they had was incredible. Super cool. There were also these characters from Arcane. They're from League of Legends. They're not actually from Arcane. They're League of Legends characters, but they had a super clean, crisp costume designs. That one wig with the giant barrel curls was so neat and clean. Then there was a Monica. There was a Monica made by hand. That costume was bitchin'. Loved that. And then there was your typical like Call of Duty, Halo, Master Chiefs, which those costumes are so technically like insanely intense in terms of their details. I've just seen a lot of them at this point. So it was like, that's really cool. And the technical detail is amazing. I just wasn't like, oh, something new. But they were really cool. I liked them a lot. This Caitlyn though, this Caitlyn had like a handmade, you can't really see it from the picture, had a handmade sniper rifle. Choice. Really, really good. This duo was really cool. They were Sonic and Silver, but they were like knights and they handmade the armor and everything. So that was kind of cool. I liked that. Then there was this Princess Mononoke. You can't really see it from the picture, but the details of this costume were so on point with the movie. Amazing. It was really, really cool. But then, so they got into the winners of the categories. And one of the director's choices was this Sailor Senshi, which it doesn't look from a distance like it's anything super, super special. It's like, oh, that's a really cool dress. But then when you get up to the mosaic glass, like Sailor Scouts that are around the outside of their dress, it's like those were all, they said in the judging panel, they were all tissue paper that she'd hand painted and put together for the dress. Insane. Insane. Also insane, so the League of Legends duo, they won one of the categories, which is super valid. Their cosplay was super clean, loved it. And then the B couple got one of the categories as well. There was this guy that was Gilgamesh from Fate. My brother was losing his mind over this character. He was like, that's such an amazing cosplay. And I was like, I don't know what that series is. He's like, you should watch it one day. I'm like, okay. But yeah, that cosplay was really cool. And the person that came with him was also part of the cosplay. So that's neat. Everybody was losing their mind over Prince and the Pauper Barbie, which granted, her outfit's amazing. The cosplay was gorgeous. But when I tell you people were losing their minds, they were like standing up and cheering. I was like, am I in the wrong generation? Did I miss something? But I mean, her cosplay was really, really good. But my favorite part of the night was that they got to the masterclass, like the masterclass best in show, the best overall set of costumes, the one that's like the best of the best. And so when they announced this, the person, Ricochet X Crafts, and their sister were sitting next to us, and the sister had liked this duo all evening. They were like, they're my favorite, and they haven't won anything. How have they not won any of the categories? And then they won Best in Show of the masterclass. And it was Alice in Wonderland, the Red Queen, and the White Rabbit. But when I tell you, the Red Queen not only had a handmade dress, but the bustles of said dress had scenes of Alice in Wonderland inside the bustles where you could see it as she moved. Did the Helena Bonham Carter makeup, did like this ornate hair thing. And then the White Rabbit not only had a handmade red velvet outfit with all the bells and whistles, with all the embroidery, with all the lace collar, with the gloves and the pearls and everything, with the hair and the ears and the wig. They also did prosthetic makeup, and it was a next level. It was next level. And the thing was, they didn't think they were going to win. They were sitting there, and when they announced, we were looking over in our row, and they were at the end of our row where we could see them. And when they announced the like White Rabbit and the Red Queen, we looked over to where they were sitting, and whoever was the White Rabbit was in shock. They were like, "Oh my God." Like, they did not think they were going to win. And they were completely floored. Like, you could just tell they were so excited and surprised. It was definitely a big ordeal. They had, like, before the costume contest even started, they did, like, a Tasha and Car Awards, I think, as, like, kind of a precursor preamble to make sure everybody's in the seating area ready to go. And then they had 4 judges for this event. Like, it was a much bigger production than the costume contest the night before, but there were more people there, and it was more work for these costumes. So it makes sense that was the case. So yeah, we decided not to do the rave after that. We were like, nope, we're too tired. We've been up for 12 hours at this walking around. We're not going to do the rave. We decided to go back, and then yeah. But I ended up soaking my feet afterwards, and I made my brother take a picture of it. My brother's like, I was like, do it. Have to be on me one more time. But yeah, it was just such a fun experience. And what I want to get at, because I've talked for like an hour and a half about this convention, is I love it so much. But I realized this last weekend why I love anime conventions so much. And it didn't dawn on me at the time because it wasn't as pressing of an issue as I feel like it is now. But something that I loved about the convention was it was such a safe space. And it was this public safe space. There were so many people that were cosplaying, that were celebrating all different body types, different accessibilities, different sexualities. It was so, at one point there was I didn't get a picture of them, but there was a Bakugo and Kirishima cosplay duo. And when they got up to the main stage, they like kissed each other. And of course, every shipper there went crazy and they were like, okay. And then they just let them go. But it's just like, where else would that environment have just facilitated such joy at that moment where people, even if you don't ship Bakugo and Kirishima, nobody was like, ew, gross. Everybody was just like, yeah. They're like, oh, of course, okay. But it was just such a welcoming environment. There was only one, as I was walking around the artist alley, there was like a group of bros, and they were like, one of them was Gaara from Naruto, which choices. But they were like, where's all the smut? And I heard him say, he's like, there's no smut here. And I was like, well, you're in the wrong panel. And I'm pretty sure if you go down in one specific aisle, they'll make you a body pillow. Don't you worry if you need one that badly. But the point is that it felt so inclusive. And there were lots of people with accessibility, different accessibilities. There were people that had incorporated their cosplay into being in a wheelchair. There was one moment where, as we were waiting to get hibachi, this guy, he had broken his leg and it was in like a thigh-high cast. And so he was using one of the motor scooters they had that you could rent there. And he accidentally hit the gas on the motor scooter. And while the woman was walking around to go get the rice for the hibachi, he rammed the scooter into the vendor and it just like went sideways. We were all like, oh, and then he just looked back and laughed at us and we were like, oh yeah. And the lady came around. She's like, what's wrong? We're like, nothing. So it was just this moment of, there was just joy and celebration. And I don't know how the rest of the world is in other corners of the world, but I feel like in the US, we're in kind of a scary time where there aren't as many celebrated safe spaces. And this felt like at an anime convention, there's not any judgment. Like, sure, you can look at a cosplay and go, that was a choice. But there's just not any like ill will or malicious intent towards people. We're all there to celebrate. We're all geeking out and fangirling and fanboying about the same things. We're all enjoying the same atmosphere. And there's a sense of this collective community and inclusivity. And it just gave me this renewed sense because so often in our current times, there's this feeling of isolation sometimes in various groups, and we feel like people are being cut off and not included. And here it was the polar opposite feeling. And plus, growing up in a family where my brother and I are the only ones out of the entire family that are into anime, and at my work, I'm like the only person at work who's in anime. Nothing gives me a bigger kick of the giggles than when you go to a convention and you see the non-convention people there. The people at the hotel that were not there for the convention that are suddenly like, what? And they get introduced into this whole new world. And then seeing the parents that brought their kids in cosplay to the convention that aren't in cosplay, that don't understand, but they're bringing their kid there because it's a space that they want to be in. And then you have the parents that do cosplay with their kids. And it's so adorable and it's wonderful. And it just was this sense of normalized celebration of difference. And in a world where difference is being isolated and targeted, spaces like anime conventions are needed more than ever before. And it's also a space where there was no AI, there was no artificial intelligence slop. It was artists celebrating their craft, whether it was sewing, whether it was beadwork, whether it was creating robots, whether it was animatronics, whether it was crafting with leather work or metals. It was celebrating human creativity. And it was just so inspiring. And I loved it. And I was like, I've missed this. Because even if you don't do cosplay, even if you just go to walk around and just soak in the vibes, it was such a welcoming community experience. I think Momocon's been my favorite con I've been to so far. I think it's been my favorite. I've not ever had a bad experience at a con, but this one's been my favorite. I don't know. I don't like to usually go to the same con 2 years in a row. And I don't know if I'll go back to Momocon next year. But if I don't next year, the year after that, I think I will. Because it was just so much fun. But I definitely know now from experience what not to do and maybe how to organize it a little bit better. So we'll see about that. As far as what I got from the artist alley, I was very minimal this year because I spent so much on parking. I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. So I got 3 stickers from this one artist in their booth because they had like a 3 for 10 thing. One, I have not had a lot of Modao Zushi merch in a long time, and I saw this. There was a lot of Heaven Official's Blessing merch. There's a lot of Heaven Official's Blessing merch. Sorry, Scum Villain, there wasn't a lot of Scum Villain. The eldest child that's neglected. There was a lot of Shilian Hwachong art, but there wasn't a lot of Modao Zushi, so when I saw this, I had to have it. It's Wang Chen as koi fish. Wang Chen, it's like Lan Wangji and Wei Wuxian on top of some koi fish. It was super cute. I thought the sticker was adorable. I was like, I need to have that. And then because it was a Dungeon Meshi weekend, one of the students on the team that I coach, they are a huge Fallon fan. They've cosplayed as Fallon themselves. So I found them this sticker of Fallon that I was like, you need to have that. So I'm going to give them that. They should be surprised. And then I got this one for myself because I love Marcel. It's Marcel with a little piece of cake. I was like, that's super cute. I need that sticker. But the person that I got them from was Noino. That was their sticker on there. So I know if you want to look them up online. But there was a lot of really cool things that I did see that usually if I go to a convention and I see things that I'm like, I might order that down the road, I'll try to ask them for a business card. And I usually keep like business cards and I'll go to their website or something and look it up and be like, okay, I'm going to save up and try to get that later. But I need to redo my space here, so I didn't really want to buy anything either. But conventions are so much fun. They're so great. I love them so much. And I highly encourage you. You don't have to buy anything. It's fun just to go for the vibes. And I definitely would recommend the other cons I've been to. Anime Blues Con and Anime Midwest are both really fun. They're great cons as well. They're not nearly as big as Momocon. Momocon's like the big one, but they're super cool. And now that I've gotten home, I've gotten online and gone to like the Momocon hashtag, and I've seen all of these videos and all these pictures of people that were cosplaying that I'm like, I didn't even see them because it was so big. And because if you don't blink and you miss it sort of situation. But I was like, damn. So I would definitely go back to Momocon. I highly recommend it. If you get a chance to go to an anime convention, do it. Do it as an act of protest. Do it as an act of celebrating creativity. Do it as an act of community. Do it even if you just go for a day, just to walk around and soak in the vibes. It's worth it. And I need to go to more in the future. So anyway, that was my convention experience. I hope you all enjoyed hearing me ramble for an hour and a half about it, but I couldn't wait to get home and tell you all how it went. So in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon on the channel with some more reactions. Bye!